What if I told you that the person you are right now is not who you actually are? Not your job title, not your reflection in the mirror, not the version of you that reacts, panics, scrolls, compares, and collapses under pressure. That's not you. That's a costume you've been wearing for so long you forgot you put it on. There's a Shaolin monk named Shi Heng Yi, the 34th generation Shaolin warrior monk and abbot of the Shaolin Temple Europe, who spent over 2 decades stripping away that costume, layer by layer. Not through motivation, not through hype. Through 5 brutally simple habits that most people are too impatient, too comfortable, or too afraid to practice. In the next few minutes, I'm going to walk you through all 5, not as a list you'll forget by tomorrow, but as a mirror. Because by the time we get to habit number 5, you're going to realize something uncomfortable. You already knew this. You just weren't doing it. Stay until the end, because the last habit is the one that ties every single other habit together. And skipping it is why most self-improvement never actually improves anything. Let's begin. Why your personality isn't fixed. Most people walk through life believing their personality is a fixed trait, like eye color or height. I'm just an anxious person. I've always been lazy. That's just who I am. Shi Heng Yi would tell you that's one of the most dangerous lies you can believe about yourself. Because personality isn't a fixed identity. It's a pattern of repeated behavior. And patterns, no matter how old, no matter how deeply grooved, can be interrupted, rewired, rebuilt. Think about it this way. A river doesn't carve a canyon because the rock wants to be carved. It carves it because water repeats the same motion in the same place for thousands of years. Change the direction of the water, even slightly, and over time, you get an entirely different canyon. Your personality is the canyon. Your habits are the water. This is the foundation Shi Heng Yi teaches at Shaolin Temple Europe, where he trains people not in mystical secrets, but in unglamorous repetition, the kind that doesn't trend on social media because it's not exciting to film someone doing the same uncomfortable thing every single day for a year. But here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. If personality is built through repetition, then every single day you're not consciously choosing your habits, you're still building a personality. Just not the one you'd choose on purpose. You are either the architect of who you're becoming, or you're the passenger. So let's talk about the 5 habits that flip you from passenger to architect. Habit 1. Know your enemy. There's a phrase that gets thrown around in ancient military philosophy, one Shi Heng Yi often returns to. Know your enemy, know yourself, and you will not be defeated in 100 battles. Most people obsess over knowing their enemy. The competitor, the market, the ex, the rival, the algorithm. But almost nobody does the harder work, knowing themselves. And here's the uncomfortable truth Shi Heng Yi doesn't sugarcoat. You are your own greatest obstacle. Not your circumstances, not your boss, not your genetics, you. The habit isn't be self-aware as some vague aspiration. It's a specific daily practice. Sitting with yourself in silence, without a phone, without music, without distraction, and observing your own mind the way a scientist observes a specimen. Not judging it, just watching it. What comes up when there's nothing to numb it? For most people, the answer is terrifying. Restlessness, anxiety, a flood of unresolved thoughts they've been outrunning for years, using notifications, snacks, small talk, and busy work. Shi Heng Yi practiced formal meditation for years before he understood something most self-help content skips entirely. Self-awareness isn't comfortable. It's supposed to be uncomfortable. If it feels peaceful and easy from day one, you're probably not doing it, you're performing it. The real practice looks like this. You sit. Your mind immediately wants to escape, to plan tomorrow, replay an argument, imagine a future conversation. Every single time you notice that wandering, you gently bring your attention back to your breath. Not once, not 5 times, sometimes 50 times in 10 minutes. That returning, not the stillness, the returning is the entire habit. Because that returning is a rep. Just like a bicep curl builds a muscle, the act of noticing your mind wander and choosing to come back builds the muscle of self-command. And once you build that muscle even slightly, something shifts in the rest of your life. You start to notice in real time the moment right before you snap at someone, the moment right before you reach for your phone out of boredom, the moment right before you say yes to something you should say no to. That tiny gap, the space between stimulus and reaction, is where your entire personality is actually decided. Not in the big dramatic moments, in the small, boring, repeated ones. Shi Heng Yi has said, in essence, that most suffering comes not from our circumstances, but from our reaction to our circumstances. And that reaction is trainable. You're not required to believe every thought you have. You're not required to react to every emotion that arises. But you can only exercise that choice if you've built the awareness to see the moment of choice in the first place. Here's your homework, right now, before you even finish this video. 10 minutes tomorrow morning, sitting in silence, no phone in the room. Not to become enlightened, just to start noticing what's actually running the show inside your head, because you cannot change what you refuse to see. Habit 2, discipline over motivation. Here's a question worth sitting with. Why does nobody need motivation to brush their teeth? You don't wake up scrolling through inspirational quotes to convince yourself to brush your teeth. You don't need a hype video. You just do it. Because it's not a decision anymore. It's identity. I am someone who brushes their teeth isn't even a thought. It's automatic. That's the target, not motivation. Identity through repetition, independent of how you feel that day. Motivation is a mood. Moods are unreliable by definition. They rise and fall based on sleep, weather, hormones, how your morning went. If your entire self-improvement strategy depends on feeling like it, you've built your life on the least stable foundation available to you. Shaolin monks train for hours daily, not because they feel inspired every single morning, but because the training doesn't ask how they feel. It simply happens, the way the sun rises, whether you're ready for it or not. This is why Shi Heng Yi's approach to discipline isn't about white-knuckling through willpower. Willpower is a limited resource. It depletes throughout the day, which is why your diet falls apart at 9 p.m., not 9 a.m. Discipline, done correctly, isn't about forcing yourself through willpower every single time. It's about removing the decision entirely. If you have to decide every single day whether you're going to train, meditate, read, or work on your goal, you will lose that negotiation eventually. Everyone does. The people who seem disciplined from the outside aren't winning some heroic internal battle every day. They've simply engineered their life so the decision isn't up for debate anymore. There's a specific mental shift here worth naming directly. Stop asking yourself, do I feel like doing this today? That question is a trap. It hands the steering wheel to your most temporary, unreliable self. The tired version of you, the lazy version of you, the scared version of you. Instead ask, is this who I've decided to become? That's a completely different question. It doesn't route through your mood. It routes through your identity, something far more stable, something you get to choose rather than something that happens to you. And this is precisely where personality actually gets built, brick by brick, not in the big dramatic decisions, starting a business, ending a relationship, moving to a new city. Those moments get all the attention, but they're rare. Your personality is built in the small, repeated, boring choices nobody's watching. Whether you get up when the alarm goes off or hit snooze. Whether you finish the workout or cut it short. Whether you show up to the hard conversation or avoid it one more day. Every one of those tiny choices is a vote for the person you're becoming. And votes accumulate. You don't become disciplined overnight. You become disciplined the way a coin jar becomes full. One small, unremarkable deposit at a time, until one day you look up and there's genuinely something substantial there. There's a phrase for this idea in behavioral psychology: identity-based habits. You don't build discipline by trying to have more willpower. You build it by deciding in advance who you are and then simply acting in alignment with that identity, especially on the days it's inconvenient. Shaolin monks don't ask, do I feel strong today, before training. The question was answered the day they chose to become a warrior monk. Everything after that is just execution. That's habit 2. Discipline isn't a feeling you wait for. It's a decision you already made that you simply keep honoring. Habit 3. Embrace adversity, don't avoid it. Most people structure their entire life around one unspoken goal: avoid discomfort. Avoid the hard conversation. Avoid the workout that burns. Avoid the topic that makes you feel exposed. Avoid the risk that might end in failure. And on the surface, this looks like self-protection. It feels safe. It feels smart. But here's what Shi Heng Yi's entire training philosophy is built on, and it's almost the exact opposite of modern comfort culture. Adversity is not the obstacle to your growth. Adversity is the mechanism of your growth. There is no version of a stronger you that doesn't pass through resistance. None. Just like there's no version of a stronger muscle that doesn't pass through the microscopic tearing of muscle fiber under load. Growth at a biological and psychological level requires stress applied in a manageable, repeated dose. Shaolin training is famously brutal. Hours of physical conditioning, repetition until failure, forms practiced thousands of times until the body simply cannot get them wrong anymore. Not because suffering is noble in itself, but because the nervous system and the character only adapt under real resistance. Comfort produces comfort. It never produces capability. Here's the part most people get backwards though. They think the goal is to eliminate fear and discomfort before they act. Once I feel confident, I'll do the hard thing. But confidence doesn't come before competence. It comes after repeated exposure to the exact thing that scares you. You don't wait until you're not afraid of public speaking to start speaking. You speak badly, nervously, imperfectly, 20, 50, 100 times. And the fear erodes because your nervous system finally gets the evidence it needed. This didn't kill me. I survived. I can do this again. Avoidance, ironically, is what keeps fear alive forever. Every time you avoid the hard conversation, the hard workout, the hard truth about yourself, you're not protecting yourself. You're teaching your own brain that the thing really is as dangerous as it feels. You're reinforcing the very fear you're trying to escape. Shi Heng Yi has spoken about how the Shaolin path is not about becoming fearless. It's about changing your relationship to fear and pain, not eliminating them, because they will never be eliminated. Life does not offer a permanently comfortable path. It offers you a choice. Face resistance on your own terms, through training and intention, or face it later, unprepared, when life forces it on you anyway. A health crisis, a job loss, a relationship ending, a loss you never saw coming. Adversity is coming either way. The only real choice is whether you meet it as someone who has practiced discomfort on purpose or as someone who has spent their whole life avoiding it and is now meeting it for the very first time at the worst possible moment. So the habit here isn't seek out suffering for its own sake. That's not wisdom. That's just self-harm dressed up in philosophy. The habit is far more precise. Seek out the specific discomfort that's directly in the path of who you're trying to become, and stop treating discomfort as a signal to retreat. Cold showers aren't magic, but choosing to stay in discomfort for 30 extra seconds when your body screams to get out, that's a rep in a much bigger, much more important skill. Staying present with difficulty instead of fleeing from it. And that skill transfers to everything. Difficult conversations, difficult decisions, difficult seasons of life you didn't choose. The next time something hard shows up in your life, physically, emotionally, professionally, try asking a different question than, how do I make this stop? Try asking, what is this specific difficulty trying to build in me? That single reframe is one of the most personality-altering shifts a person can make. Habit 4. Silence, solitude, and digital detachment. Quick, honest question. When was the last time you sat somewhere, no phone, no music, no podcast, no conversation, for more than 10 minutes, doing genuinely nothing? If you're struggling to remember, you're not alone. Most people today are functionally incapable of being alone with their own thoughts. The moment silence arrives, the phone comes out. Not because there's an actual emergency to check, but because silence has started to feel unbearable. This is one of the quietest, least talked about crises of the modern personality. We have engineered a world so saturated with noise, input, and stimulation that most people have never actually met themselves. They know their group chats, their feeds, their notifications intimately. They know themselves, barely at all. Shi Heng Yi's world, the Shaolin Temple, is built on the opposite principle. Long stretches of silence, solitary practice, meditation not as a productivity hack squeezed into a busy schedule, but as a core discipline, treated with the same seriousness as physical training. Why does this matter so much for personality specifically? Because silence is the only environment where your actual thoughts, values, and instincts can surface, as opposed to the thoughts other people, algorithms, and advertisers have been feeding you all day. Every scroll, every video, every notification is, in a very real sense, someone else's thought entering your head. Constant input means constant borrowed thinking. You start to react to the world with opinions you never actually formed yourself. You just absorbed them at volume, all day, every day, until they felt like your own. Silence interrupts that. It's the only space where you can ask without external noise drowning out the answer. What do I actually think? What do I actually want? Who am I when nobody's watching and nothing's demanding my attention? This isn't about becoming a monk. Nobody's asking you to disappear into a temple for 10 years. The habit is far more modest, far more doable, and far more powerful than it sounds. Build small, consistent pockets of silence and solitude into your normal life, on purpose. A walk with no phone, a meal eaten without a screen, 15 minutes each morning before you touch your device at all. Not because silence itself is magical, but because it's the only condition under which self-awareness, habit number 1, can actually happen. You cannot hear your own mind over the noise of everyone else's. There's a specific danger Shi Heng Yi points to in constant stimulation. It doesn't just distract you from your thoughts. Over time, it erodes your capacity to sit with discomfort at all, because you've trained yourself to escape the instant boredom or difficulty appears. And we already covered in habit 3 exactly how costly that avoidance becomes. So silence isn't passive. It's not doing nothing. It's one of the most active forms of self-construction available to you, because it's the only place where you actually get to hear what you think, uninterrupted by what everyone else wants you to think. Try this. Tomorrow, take one meal, completely alone, phone in another room, no content, just eating, and whatever thoughts arise. It will feel strange, possibly even uncomfortable, especially at first. That discomfort is information. It's telling you exactly how disconnected you've become from your own inner world, and exactly how much you need this habit. Habit 5. Live by values, not by ego. This is the one, the habit that ties every other habit together, and the one most people quietly resist the longest, because it requires giving up something almost everyone is secretly addicted to: the need to be seen as impressive. Ego, in the way Shi Heng Yi and Shaolin philosophy use the term, isn't about arrogance in the obvious sense, the loud, boastful kind everyone recognizes easily. It's something far sneakier. Ego is the part of you that filters every decision through the question, how will this make me look? Should I take this risk? Ego asks, what if I fail publicly? Should I admit I was wrong? Ego asks, what if that makes me look weak? Should I walk away from something that isn't serving me anymore? Ego asks, what will people think if I quit? Notice something about every single one of those questions. They're not actually about what's true for you. They're about appearance, about how you're perceived. And a life run by appearance is a life where you never actually get to find out who you are underneath it. Because every decision is being made by a committee of imagined spectators in your head, most of whom aren't even paying attention to you in the first place. Shaolin monastic life strips almost all of that away deliberately. Shaved heads, simple robes, communal life, repetitive, unglamorous training that nobody's filming. The entire structure is designed to remove the external validation loop most people build their entire identity around, so that what's left, the actual values, the actual character, has nowhere left to hide. Here's the practical version of this habit, because let go of ego is useless as advice unless it's actionable. Before making a decision, ask whether you're choosing this because it aligns with your values or because it protects your image. Those two motivations can look identical from the outside, but they produce completely different lives. Someone who works hard because they value mastery and someone who works hard because they're terrified of looking lazy can end up doing the exact same actions, but only one of them is actually free. The other is just performing for an audience, even when no audience is present, because the audience has been internalized. Shi Heng Yi speaks often about the difference between doing and being, that real change isn't a performance you put on for others to witness, it's a transformation that happens whether anyone's watching or not. If your discipline evaporates the moment nobody's around to see it, it was never discipline, it was image management. This is also, not coincidentally, why habits 1 through 4 all lead here. Self-awareness, habit 1, is what lets you notice when ego is driving instead of values. Discipline without motivation, habit 2, is what lets you act on your values even when it's not impressive or rewarded in the moment. Embracing adversity, habit 3, is what happens automatically once you stop needing to look good, because you're finally willing to be seen struggling, failing, and trying again in public, since you're no longer protecting an image. And silence, habit 4, is the only space quiet enough to actually hear the difference between your own voice and the borrowed voice of everyone you're subconsciously trying to impress. Living by values instead of ego doesn't mean you stop caring what happens to you. It means the compass changes. Instead of navigating by what will make me look good, you navigate by what actually matters to me, even if no one ever finds out I did it. That single shift, private integrity over public image, is, according to nearly every tradition of character development, from Shaolin philosophy to Stoicism to modern psychology, the actual definition of character. Not what you do when you're being watched, what you do when you're completely alone, and no one will ever know either way. Ask yourself honestly, right now, how many of your daily choices are actually about your values, and how many are quietly about how you'll be perceived? Most people, if they're honest, find the ego column is far fuller than they expected. That's not a failure. That's just a starting point. Awareness of it is the entire first move. Let's connect the entire structure, because these habits were never meant to be practiced in isolation. Self-awareness shows you what's actually running your behavior beneath the surface, the unconscious patterns quietly steering your entire personality. Discipline without motivation gives you the mechanism to act on what you've learned about yourself, independent of how you feel on any given day. Embracing adversity gives that discipline something worth applying itself to, real resistance, real growth, instead of comfortable stagnation. Silence and solitude protect the whole system from being hijacked by outside noise, borrowed opinions, and constant distraction. And living by values instead of ego is the compass that decides which direction all of that discipline, all of that resilience, and all of that self-awareness actually points toward. Without habit 5, someone could theoretically build tremendous discipline and resilience and simply aim it at impressing people. Without habit 4, someone could try to know themselves, but drown that knowledge out in constant noise before it ever takes root. Every habit here is load-bearing. Remove one and the structure becomes unstable. This is exactly why Shi Heng Yi's approach isn't a quick framework you apply for 30 days and move on from. It's a way of living, practiced daily, refined over years, sometimes decades, not because change is supposed to be slow for its own sake, but because real character, unlike a New Year's resolution, isn't built through a single burst of motivation. It's built the same way that canyon we talked about earlier gets carved, through the same water, moving in the same direction for a very long time. Here's something worth sitting with before we close. None of these 5 habits are secret. You already knew before this video that meditation helps. You already knew discipline matters more than motivation. You already knew that avoiding discomfort keeps you stuck. You already knew that constant phone use is draining something important out of you. And you already knew, somewhere in you, the difference between doing something for the right reasons and doing it to look good. So if none of this is new information, why hasn't your personality already changed? Because information was never the missing piece. Application is the missing piece. And application is uncomfortable, unglamorous, and completely unremarkable to watch from the outside, which is exactly why so few people actually commit to it. Shi Heng Yi didn't become who he is by watching videos about discipline. He became who he is through thousands of repetitions most people will never see, on days nobody was filming, when the outcome wasn't guaranteed and the reward wasn't immediate. You don't need a Shaolin temple to start. You need 10 minutes of silence tomorrow morning. You need one decision made from identity instead of mood. You need one moment where you choose discomfort instead of avoidance. You need one meal without your phone. You need one choice made for your values instead of your image. That's it. That's where it actually starts. Not in some dramatic future version of your life. Right here, in the next 24 hours, in a choice small enough that it won't feel significant at all in the moment. But 5 years from now, looking back, you'll realize that choice was the whole thing. So here's the real question this video was always actually asking. Are you going to be the water, or are you going to be the canyon? Are you going to keep letting old patterns carve the same grooves into your life on autopilot? Or are you finally going to redirect the flow, one small, unglamorous, repeated choice at a time? If this resonated with you, don't just like it and scroll past. Pick one of these 5 habits, the one that made you the most uncomfortable while I was talking, and do it today. Not tomorrow, today. That discomfort you felt is exactly where the growth is hiding. Subscribe if you want more breakdowns like this one. Real philosophy, real practice, no empty hype. And let me know in the comments, which of these 5 habits are you starting with?